are we on probation then? We're not quite sure whether you'll be coming or not coming.
Well, let's see.
All on you, Brian.
We'll have to have you
Let's get past the election.
we do try to stay away from politics here at the moment. Any other visiting Rotarians or members? Yes.
I've been here several times. My name is Tim. I've been visiting from the Rotary Club at Capitol Tuesday dinner. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, normally at this stage we have a blessing. These sometimes don't work out quite the way you expect them to work out. And I must say, this reminded me of something. And we've got a number of good Presbyterians here. E.G., yes, you're over there. And you sit near the front, so you'll remember this one. This is Bob Dunham, and this is a time with the children. And they all cluster around the altar, and the priest, and the minister speaks up. Who else is here? We got Dave LaRoche. Dave, you sit a bit too far back. You might not have heard. Cliff, you go to the first service, so you would have heard this. Because this happened in the second service. But I remember some time ago, the minister said to the children, well, what prayers do you say before your meals? And so this immediately, one little fellow just chimed in. He said, I don't need to say grace. My mother was a good cook. And then another one which I remember, the parents haven't trained these kids. We never knew who they belonged to. But and what prayer do you say? And he said, well, we only say prayers when visitors come. So this was again. Anyway, we will have something today. I was wondering, we've had some soaring blessings. We had Paul Ransford, any people who remember Paul, and he gave these inspirational prayers and so forth, and whatever your faith, you couldn't help but being inspired by Paul. And he was a minister, so that he did have a little plus and advantage in doing that. I just asked a friend the other day, what do you say to your family? And so she gave me this little verse here, so I'll read it to you and see if you like it. May you be happy and healthy. May you be connected and calm. May you see the natural joy of being alive. And may you accept yourself exactly as you are. That's what I like. Now, I remember my badge. Now, I'm not sure how many of you did or didn't. So, we're raising some funds here for, and I'll tell you what some of these things go for, I think. And so, if you didn't have your badge, or if your team is still in the bracket and still got a chance, perhaps put a double, because you've got a chance for a big win. So, there, send that one around if you would. So you might wonder, what has happened to this flying basket? Welcome, Bob. You always a bit late. You might have all wondered what happens to this flying basket. Well, I'll tell you what's happened the other evening. We had this wonderful pop-up. We're at the Carolina Inn. And there were quite a cluster of people there. And when I arrived there, they were sitting at the main table, surrounded by all Rotarians. Our president, and he was sitting there, and here we were, all having a fine time, enjoying the company. I mean, the very concept of what Rotary should all be about. Fellowship, collegiality, friendship, laughter, gaiety, and all these things. So this, to me, was the perfect opportunity for our chairman, our president, to take this flying basket and use it, say, this is the purpose of the flying basket, is for the club. But not a word. So Mike, I have to ask you, that was a glorious opportunity. Is it all this going to the Okanichi Steakhouse for you and Debbie? And I don't know how many of you know about that, but that's where he and his wife met. And so maybe it's a nostalgia.
No longer standing.
No, well, then that's the Texas. All right, Texas. Right. Anyway, a couple of good things happened when I was there. Well, Christy, I think you are the custodian. And we have very fortunate that Christy is able to take fine care of us. Anyway, we were there, and quite a few people, like Scott, you were there. And as you can see, Scott has got this sling on his shoulder. Scott, you've got to get your story right. I mean, was it really skydiving and getting tangled in the trees? Or is it
Skydiving into the tree.
into the tree? Well, the other one that I heard circulating that you were doing pickup with the ice hockey with the canes, and then you got a bit of a buffeting there, you know. And well, the other one is you've been seeing skiing and going down off-piste and going gliding with some trees. Anyway, we were all a bit confused. So Scott, get yourself straight there. We'd like to know. Another conversation I had, which was very interesting, I thought, was with Scott, with Rob Maitland. So Rob is, as you might know, a newlywed, and he's got experience in these things now. Right. And so I said to him, tell me, is marriage like a dinner when the dessert comes first? And he was quite taken by that idea. All right. Now, right. And then, you know, we don't have seen lots of people here. We don't have Celeste now, do we? Our police chief. Yeah, because I had read something and I just wanted to check and see what we would have to say about this. Because what I read was the police had found a hole in the wall of the local nudist camp, and they were looking into it. And I was just wondering, you know, what's emerged from that. Linda, you're a good friend of hers. Can you find out and let us know?
I'll be happy to.
You're happy to do that. All right. Now, Tim, we don't have Tim, our vice president, here today. Hey, no. Anyway, I was having a good back. Anyway, I was having a little chat with him, and because he's going to be our president next year, and he was talking about time to tell you about the importance of collegiality, fellowship, friends, things like that. And that reminded me of a story of my brother-in-law, who's a Rotarian, got me involved with Rotary. And he told me about a district governor coming to talk to a Rotary Club. He was at that meeting. And the district governor, we've had district governor, we had one a few weeks ago, and some people they listen with resignation, some with curiosity, some with inattention. But in this case, the district governor came up. Tim, this might be interesting for you because it's your turn coming up at some point, I suppose. And so he spoke about the importance of Rotary and these things I just mentioned. And he said, now, looking around, we've got a fine club there. How many of you are sitting at the same table as last week and sitting next to the same people as last week? And there was a large number of hands that went up. And he said, thank you very much. And he sat down. One of the shortest district governor talks we've ever had, but I think he got his message over, what Rotary is all about. So I thought that was quite interesting what happened there. Now, I think Mike was looking at his table there. Let's see. Yeah, and some of you from the church will know Tom Brown. Tom Brown's the organist, a wonderful fellow. He's at Azalea now, which is a place for older people. Brian Stabler was there, spent some years there. Anyway, we went to see him one evening. You have dinner with these guests, and we were there, and there were two other ladies at the table. And one lady, about Christmas time, and she was lamenting the fact that she always sent checks to her children at Christmas time. And never did she ever get any thank you notes. And the other lady said, but I always get a thank you note. Well, from all my grandchildren and children. I said, really? Well, what you've got to do is you send them the checks, but don't sign them. And then lastly, we'll give you something. Yeah. So, Marvin, you'll hear, and they say Omar's not here, but some of you old Rotarians will know my son-in-law, this is Rob Borum, and he was a member here. They're down in Texas now. And when I heard the story, I thought, this is what Rob would do, wasn't it? Because this was a fellow, and he once again, and I don't know if any of you have ever done it, but you forget your wedding anniversary. And Joe, this fellow had done this, and he'd done it a couple of times. His wife was now really curious. And once more, how can you do that? It's such an important day of telling her. And she said to him, look, if I don't see tomorrow morning in the driveway something bright, shiny, and beautiful that goes from 1 to 120 in 6 seconds, there's going to be some trouble around here. So Joe gets a little concerned about this. Anyway, he goes out to work early the next morning, and she wakes up, she goes out, and she sees a beautiful box packed in the driveway. So brings it in, opens up the box, and there is something beautiful, bright, brand new, and it goes, does that? It's a bathroom scale. And no one quite knows what's happened to Joe. Thank you.
Good job. Good one. I like that.
Can you hear? There we go. Mic's on now. Hey, it's good to be back. I was out last week, but I'm back again. I hope y'all didn't have too much fun without me. I'm sure you did, but talk all about me. That's okay. A couple quick announcements. Liz, you're first. Ladies first.
Just want to let everybody know that there's a Green Team Zoom meeting April 2nd. Two members of the Southern Environmental Law Center are going to tell us about state and national environmental issues. So hope as many of you can join us on April 2nd call. Thanks.
That's the day after April Fool's Day for you people that are calendar challenged. Chad, you've got a quick announcement, I think.
Yeah, on your tables there's a flyer that we're about a trip that we're doing for Mount Pine. This is a trip with a group of maybe 10 people, and we're not going to go work there. We're going to go see some of the projects that Mount Pine is doing, maybe the Rotary Club project. We're going to try to go to 2 Rotary Club meetings. One, Lake it's Fun, which is truly the most beautiful lake in the world. It's surrounded by 3 volcanoes, and it's we're going to also spend some time in Antigua, Guatemala. There'll be a tour guide with us, an interpreter, someone who's very familiar with the space, and it's a very, very safe trip. And because I'm going, we're staying at nice hotels, so it's easy to get some pretty bad beds there, but we're going to stay at some nice places. So just, if you're interested, let me know. I can tell you more about it. You can read about it. Thanks.
DJ Martin has a very special announcement about one of our members.
2 things we've been waiting for from Jody Magnus. First is her book on Jerusalem, and it's so heavy I can hardly lift it. But it takes the history of Jerusalem all the way up until the Crusades. And this is an extraordinary achievement published by Oxford University Press.
Wow.
Maybe more important is that the art we've heard about
Yeah.
this article that Jody has written, but it has been written about Jody and her fellow workers at the wonderful project at Hukok in Israel, and it's wonderfully accompanied by pictures of UNC students who worked on the project and the mosaics, extraordinary mosaics, which her group found, which have been circulated widely among us, but not among the whole world via National Geographic. So congratulations, Jody.
And the best part about that is Jody has agreed to do a program for us this year, and I'm hoping that she's going to talk about this wonderful project that I've been kind of following vicariously through her articles and that type thing. Anyway, it is time now to bring up Jeff to introduce our speaker for the day. So come on up, Jeff.
Thank you. I've been given that I have to cut my 30-minute introduction down to a minute. So
Well, the sergeant also.
okay. But I'm very happy and pleased that Dave Bullock has agreed to come speak with us. He has given his time to the university countless ways. He, of course, is a graduate of UNC and now a native of North of Chapel Hill. So we're glad to have you here. I also want to personally thank you for the mentoring you've done with my daughter as she joined the board and helped her learn the ropes. So it's very, very appreciated. So looking forward to hearing what you have to tell us about how the board works, and you'll have a lot of questions, but we're all friends here. Thank
you. Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here. I left UNC in 1990 with $15 in my pocket, and I borrowed my dad's pickup truck to start a job in Thomasville, North Carolina as a newspaper reporter, having been a graduate of the journalism school. So when I got to be chair of the board at Chapel Hill, there was at least one time my head got a little big and I came home from an event. It was a dinner or luncheon or something, and my wife had actually gone with me. And somebody had mentioned that I was the 25th chair of the board at Chapel Hill, and I told her, I said, we got home, I said, it's pretty good, 25, that's rare air, right? She said, yeah, I guess so. She said, 25, how about taking out the trash? So my wife keeps me honest. She's also a graduate of Chapel Hill. So I'm going to dispense with sort of my background or whatever. Overall, I want to say the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill continues to thrive. There are 72,000 applications currently at the university. That does include transfers. That is a 15% increase actually from last year. So including transfers, that's impressive. Tuition has remained unchanged for the last 8 years. And I think that's something that our board and the university itself should be very proud of, and we are proud of. Our research dollars continue to top $1 billion a year. Actually, it's about 1.2 this coming year. But we can't rest on our laurels. And to begin with, I do want to mention, since we do have an interim chancellor, Lee Roberts, who just assumed the role, I want everybody here to know that he is an accomplished member of the business community and brings a real professional skill set to the role. I think it's a topic for an entirely different talk on what maybe previous expectations of chancellors and chancellors' backgrounds are and what skill sets they bring to the job. But I do think that, particularly at an interim basis, Lee checks a lot of boxes. I want to talk about three things today. One, governance of UNC Chapel Hill and the UNC system generally. Then I want to talk about athletics, which I know a lot of people in here are interested in and I have a lot of information on, and that will include the ACC. And then I want to just mention a few important issues and things that continue to linger and go on at UNC that I think will be important in the future. It's likely a good bet that everyone in this room is aware that during my time on the Board of Trustees has not been real passive. To be clear, however, ultimately, the Board of Governors since 1971 has really been in charge of governing the university at Chapel Hill and the other 16 constituent institutions. The word overreach has been used by many interested parties, both people who work for the university and those who are alums and otherwise. And most of that is directed toward initiatives put forward by the Board of Governors and the Board of Trustees. Many of these criticisms, I think, emanate from, I assume, the thought that the legislature is improperly exerting influence over the Board of Governors and or the Board of Trustees. I'll tell you, in my personal experience, I know a lot of legislators, I've talked to a lot of legislators, but at no time has any legislator ever asked me to do one thing or another. It's interesting to point out, however, that in the history of the university, legislators actually filled the role of trustees. That's how the university was started. The legislature divided the state up into 12 different districts. That's how you got 12 trustees plus a student body president. And there was a legislator sort of elected from in that geographic group to be a trustee at the university. As for the Board of Trustees, our authority emanates from the North Carolina General Statutes. And I'll read from it, and it says, the powers of the board include, and this is what is used often by people when they describe the power of the Board of Trustees, that the Board of Trustees shall serve as an advisor to the Board of Governors and an advisor to the Chancellor concerning the management and development of the institution. Also discusses in that same article that certain powers shall be defined and delegated by the Board of Governors. Now, this statutory provision, and in particular the word advisor, is one that basically says we want to include you in decisions, but we don't want to let you affect decisions. I will point out there is a second statutory provision in the North Carolina statutes, and that details the duties of the Chancellor. In addition to attending board members and keeping the board informed, this comes straight from the statute. The Chancellor shall be the administrator and executive head of the institution and shall exercise complete executive authority therein, subject to the direction of the President, and that's the President of the system, and he shall be responsible, and this is the language that our board uses a lot in our discussions, carrying out policies of the Board of Governors and policies of the Board of Trustees. So the policy-making authority of the Board of Trustees is where the heft to our actions comes from. At its core, trustees' role, I believe, is about stewardship. It's been said that trustees should first and foremost do no harm. I would counter that in a landscape marked by rapid cultural changes and challenges, it's no longer enough for trustees to merely nod in agreement or simply follow precedents. We must have the courage to ask why. Every time we engage, we demand a justification. Every time we challenge a norm, every time we reiterate those questions, we are in an effort trying to show a commitment to excellence. The future of higher education demands not passive observers, but active, courageous leaders. I think simply doing no harm is dangerous. For example, it's my opinion, and my opinion only, I'm not speaking for the board on this, but government bureaucratic accreditors who promulgate from on high without any regard for campus expertise. And make no mistake about it, accreditors don't care what the chancellor at UNC Chapel Hill thinks, and they don't care what the faculty at UNC Chapel Hill thinks. They promulgate rules and apply them to our university. They also disregard, in many instances, local leadership, and ultimately, I think that is doomed to failure as a system. Passive rubber stamping and potted plant governance beckons to me Hemingway's line from his seminal work, The Sun Also Rises. How do you go bankrupt? Two ways, gradually and then all of a sudden. So, let's talk athletics. The financial condition of athletics at Carolina is defined as follows. See my previous statement on Hemingway. And I mean that in all seriousness. Here's the numbers. So $33 million in TV revenue from the ACC media contract. We get that. That is due to the university because of the grant of rights that the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill has conveyed upon the ACC. There are two parts to that contract. There's what's called a base media right contract, which is $20.4 million to UNC, and that figure is scheduled to grow at 4.5% a year. The difference in the $33 million comes from about $12.6 million that is due from the ACC network, which is actually a separate contract, both of which actually have a duration to 2036. 80% of that revenue comes from football. Let me repeat that. 80% of that revenue comes from football, 26.6 million. 20% comes from basketball. Now, a little different in terms of our internal monies. Ticket sales at Carolina are approximately $30 million. $15 million from basketball and $13 million from football. So therein lies sort of a quandary, right? If we're getting a lot of money from football, from the TV revenue, and we're not recouping it in ticket sales, that is a disconnect. Return on investment to cover the cost of scholarships is about $13.5 million. There's an additional appropriation of $7.4 million from funds available that are unrestricted out of our endowment and foundation. And the university, in the last couple of years, through our leadership, and the board has led this, has provided an additional $5 million directly from the university to help cover expenses in the athletic department. Sponsorships are two sources, contract with Learfield and Nike, that equal approximately $10 million. After paying for football and basketball, the university is generally left with loosely $40 million to pay for the remaining 26 sports. Carolina fields 28 varsity sports. There aren't many other universities in the nation that do that, and we have an excellent commitment, particularly to women's sports and Olympic sports. I hope that never stops. That doesn't change the financial necessity to keep those sports funded primarily through football and basketball. We trail the average, and let me repeat that, the average Big Ten and SEC school by at least $35 million a year currently. Bear in mind, these numbers do not account for dollars related to name, image, and likeness. We could do a whole two-part series on that. NIL has changed college athletics, and Carolina cannot ignore it. We cannot whine about it, and we must develop a strategy to deal with the reality that is name, image, and likeness. At the outset, it's clear, however, and we all know we're part of the ACC. Listen, I'm a kid that I can remember being in 3rd or 4th grade, and my mom took me out of school on the Friday of ACC tournament. Anybody ever do that? And sometimes the teachers would roll the TV into the classroom, and you'd watch the first round. I was the kid that took the TV table and set it up and had my spiral notebook, and I kept my own stats. So I'm an ACC kind of guy. But the fact of the matter is our conference affiliation with the ACC is clearly not providing Carolina the value that we could get from a free market. And that's just clear. Nostalgia is not going to help us with that. The expansion of the ACC, for example, was opposed by the Board of Trustees when I was chair. The chancellor went into an ACC Zoom room. And let me stop there. I thought that was not really appropriate. The ACC commissioner called a meeting to expand the ACC by 3 schools, one of which is in Texas and 2 of which are in California. They did it by Zoom at 7:30 in the morning on a Friday. I mean, if you can't get together and meet face to face on something that important, I find that to be clearly a lack of leadership. And I don't mind saying it. I think our conference commissioner lacked leadership in that. I found that to be cowardly, quite frankly. Our chancellor went in and voted no to adding Stanford in California and SMU. That expansion was approved, however, by 3/4 of the conference, which included, interestingly, a yes vote from Notre Dame, which continues to maintain independence in football. Now, I find that to be quite ridiculous. So, why would we oppose it? And our board was, quite frankly, out front on this from the very beginning. So was our athletic director, Bob Cunningham, and Kevin was too. And there were a lot of reasons, not the least of which was the travel, the time away from class. That's pretty easy. there was a hollow promise from the ACC, which quite frankly, we haven't got the final numbers on, but I am convinced will not come in at the number they promised to help cover travel expenses. There was also this idea that somehow we were going to play some baseball and other non-revenue sports, maybe an SMU as a halfway mark, and my comment was, well, I don't like giving away home games. I mean, why would we want to do that? I mean, we've got a great stadium here. We expect people to come to here. By the way, we're Carolina, we're not SMU, right? And so those were clear objections. Also, the financial model, Stanford and California giving up 70% of the revenue for a fixed period of time, which is approximately 6.5 to 7 years, and SMU taking zero for that 6.5 to 7 years, still did not move the financial model enough to get us to where we're in the neighborhood of where the SEC and the Big Ten are with respect to revenue. And you've got teams, well, I said average teams, you've got teams like Rutgers that's getting $35 million more a year than we are. I mean, come on, right? I think we can all agree that we're more valuable than Rutgers. No offense to Rutgers, great institution, right? It really is. Great institution, great academic institution. And I don't mean to belittle Rutgers. Don't take that the wrong way. They're a fantastic institution, great athletics. But nevertheless, I think Carolina has a much more valuable brand and a lot more to offer to fans in general. And the state of North Carolina does too. My biggest objection, however, was, and why I started with governance, was to the governance structure. And that is, despite the fact that Stanford, Cal, and SMU came in with less share of the revenue, they did not come in with less voting rights. So now we've added 3 more schools that, in my estimation, are not interested in what UNC Chapel Hill or the top tier of the conference has to say. So now we've got 3 more no votes against anything we want to do. That's my opinion. Again, I'm speaking for myself on that, but I think I'm right about that. That was one of my biggest objections. Nonetheless, the expansion combined with the lack of leverage the ACC has as a conference will mean, in my opinion, that the ACC cannot and will not continue in its current form. And the data backs this up. For example, the college football playoff money was just released this week. The SEC and the Big Ten will each receive $2.3 billion, and the ACC will receive $1.36. I mean, that right there should tell you where we stand in terms of conference alignment and the value of the conference. We have 3 choices. First, we can go the way of Johns Hopkins. We can just throw in the towel on major college sports, have a few marquee non-revenue sports, and play a lot of club sports. Second, we can be content to play what will be second-tier basketball and football. And this is going to require, in my opinion, a lot of financial and emotional commitment for not a lot of payoff. Or thirdly, we can reassess, get to work, gather forces, and move forward to participate in major college athletics. It's my opinion the third approach is what Carolina alums, Carolina fans, and people of North Carolina actually expect. The secret sauce of Carolina is largely baked into the fact that we have been able to combine high academic standards with affordability and a fantastic college experience that includes competitive intercollegiate athletics, both women's sports and men's sports, non-revenue and revenue sports. You know, looking at that second approach, all you have to do is look to Duke this year, okay? By all measurements, their football team had a pretty good year, just a good year, right? They went to a second-tier type bowl, had a little bit of success. And Elko still could never beat Carolina, right? So in their estimation, it wasn't a great year because they didn't beat us, all right, in football. But they lost their coach to a multi-million-dollar contract, and he took all his players with him. That's what you get when you play in the second tier. You're going to put a lot of emotional and financial energy into something. You know, does anybody in this room believe that if Mac Brown was 42, not 72, he wouldn't have already been picked up by another team, paid a lot more money, and left? I believe he probably would have. And I know Mac loves Carolina, but
Yeah,
but that was a different day and a different time, totally different time, Dick. It was a totally different time back then, totally different situation. I'm not comparing that. But in today's world, a 42-year-old Mac Brown probably would have been gone a couple years ago. managing to get, I mean, he's been arguably the most successful football coach at Carolina, and our brand actually punches above our performance on the field, although we've done fairly well. To make a move now, we must justify that move financially and lose what I call the Carolina arrogance that says this should just happen because we're Carolina. I think we're going to have to get to a reality where being Carolina in today's world and in North Carolina is not going to be enough. We need to make our case. We need to put together a strategy, and we need to execute that strategy, or we'll harken back to my Hemingway line. We're just going to go bankrupt gradually, and then all of a sudden. The Board of Governors recently took action on this, and I want to tell everybody here the rationale for that. It hasn't been really accurately reported, in my opinion. So a lot of the Board of Governors taking the approach of wanting to have a say in conference alignment does not come from anything to do with NC State or Carolina. It actually comes from East Carolina and Charlotte, because both East Carolina and Charlotte recently changed conferences, and as a result, both got upside down in their athletic budgets. They also looked at the governance structure. Prior to them taking that action, one person and one person only had the sole authority to make a conference decision on multiple millions of dollars over decades of time, and that was the chancellor by his or herself. Now, my opinion is there should be some governance on that, and that should be run through a board of trustees, a board of governors, or a group other than just one person in a room making that decision. So that's the basis of it. I don't think that means that NC State and Carolina can't change conference. I don't think it means that NC State and Carolina can't go to different conferences. I think it simply means we better have a financial plan, and we better have a strategy that makes sense to move the university's athletic program forward. I'm going to be real quick on this because I wanted to talk about a couple of other lingering things, and then I want to answer questions because Jim, Edner, I'm sure you've got some questions. But do be kind to me. My dad did used to work for you. You hired him for one of his first jobs. Let's talk budgets. I use that plural because on my first day as a trustee, John Pryor and myself were treated to the obligatory orientation session, and at that session we learned that the university operated over $4 billion a year with 16 separate budgets. That's right, 16 separate budgets. They weren't parts of a single budget. There were 16 separate budgets. They were overseen by the chief academic officer at the time. We have vowed to fix that, and our board both insisted and worked with the administration very well to fix that, and we changed it to one uniform budget system that is forward-looking. In the process, we discovered a $100 million structural shortfall, a deficit that, had that not been fixed, would continue to today. Hard work, and less than a year later, with the cooperation of a fantastically newly created university CFO position, we balanced the budget and today are running a modest surplus. Let me mention real quick the School of Civic Life and Leadership. I believe it's a game-changing opportunity to make Carolina the place where diversity of thought can be accepted, appreciated, and tools developed to bring together all viewpoints. If you accept the premise, and look, I did say this, and I will stand by what I said. I said at the time there is no shortage of left of center viewpoints in faculty at Carolina. That's just a fact. Doesn't make it bad. Our faculty is fantastic. We are world-class faculty. We have the best faculty, in my opinion, on the planet. It doesn't change that fact. But if you accept the premise that North Carolina, at its best, politically is a purple state, and that taxpayers contribute $650 million each year to Carolina, then I'm not sure why there would be harsh opposition to including faculty with opposing viewpoints of the overwhelming majority of the faculty. We have to, again, at Carolina, take a look at the people of North Carolina who are funding our efforts. It is a fantastic model. We are the envy of a lot of other public schools across this nation. University of Virginia, they went sort of their own way. Let me tell you, I've talked to their board of regents. They would love to have it back where the state actually helped them. We've got fantastic support from our state. We have nearly $1 billion in deferred maintenance on campus facilities. Again, I could give you a whole talk on that. So that's going to have to be addressed. I want to say one thing also, that the university and the town of Chapel Hill, quite frankly, need to work better together. Franklin Street, for example, is part of the university's brand, and it's part of the town of Chapel Hill's brand. Panhandling and the streetscape, particularly on the 100 block of Chapel Hill, are issues that must be addressed and remedied if we're going to move forward. In sum, I think it takes courage to challenge the status quo at UNC Chapel Hill. I've endeavored to do that. I don't know that I've always been successful. I think I probably haven't always been successful, but I will continue to try to challenge the status quo because I think it's important to do that. I don't expect to get everything I want, probably won't, but I do think that we've got to be willing to look at things differently. I'm going to conclude with a couple of light thoughts. I didn't start with a joke because the Sergeant at Arms had already had everybody laughing. But you've all heard Jeff Foxworthy talk about, how do you know you're a redneck? Well, he does this entire show on that. One of his jokes is, he says, if you've ever been pulled over for a speeding ticket with a mattress tied on top of your car, you might be a redneck, right? So I've compiled a few to say, how do you know you're a trustee? And I've been through all of this. Actually, if you've ever gone around the room asking fellow trustees if anybody has extra blood pressure medicine in the middle of a meeting because you forgot yours at home or because you just want a double dose, you might be a trustee. If you've ever decided to stop answering your phone for numbers that you don't know, particularly if they're from New York, to avoid a newspaper reporter, you're probably a trustee. If you've Googled the terms in the middle of a faculty presentation just to make sure you know what they mean, then you are certainly a trustee, because our faculty, I assure you, is much brighter than I ever dreamed of being. I would insert the term pedagogy for teaching methods and high fidelity for quality. Those were two that I remember. And if you've ever pulled out a stack of previously presented surveys that seemingly always show that university administrators are underpaid compared to their peer institution peers, then you definitely have been a trustee. So anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I am glad to answer questions.
Thank you, sir, for being here today. Really appreciate the candor of your comments. So I've got two questions for you. The first is there a path to where the athletic conferences can be unhooked from the academic conferences? I mean, I wonder if there's a way where the UNC could be an academic conference and an athletic conference, and within that, is there a way where UNC could play at different levels in different sports? Say for example, we're a Tier 1 basketball school, Tier 2 football school, Tier 3 wrestling school, or whatever, so that you can kind of make the budgets work a little better. And the second question is on these lawsuits. And I'm not sure that this is in the lawsuit, but it seems to me that the most compelling argument that UNC, Clemson, FSU, anybody could have is that they signed over their media rights. And then ACC reached their fiduciary duty by signing them away on a 20-year TV contract that's clearly, not what all the other conferences did. And that's why we're half the revenue of everybody else. I mean, could that be the legs that we need to get out from under this media rights? So those are the two questions.
So good questions. On the first question, to your point about playing in different tiers of sports, we actually almost did that because of COVID. We were very close, probably 2 meetings away. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't believe this, but this is actually true. And former trustee and former Chapel Hill resident, now lives in Charlotte, Monroe, Kobe, and I worked on a subcommittee with athletic director Cunningham on this, and we almost went D3 in baseball, and then almost cut a half a dozen sports. We decided to make a commitment not to do that for as long as we could, which is sort of why, and I said we have the $5 million from the university that the university kicks into the athletic department from other sources. That is the legacy of that decision, because we wanted to stay competitive and keep our sports going as much as possible. Because what it was, we wanted to be able to ride buses, example, for sports instead of getting on planes. You'd be surprised how much these charters cost. I mean, it's ridiculous. It just really is. I hope everybody here is in the charter business, but you need to lower your prices if you are. It is really expensive. Very hard to play in two tiers. It's almost all or nothing in terms of your college athletics. And the fear is that if you opt for that second prong, which is playing in a lesser tier and not playing major college sports, you're basically the JV feeder system for the big schools. And I just got to be honest with you, I just don't think our alumni, I don't think the people in this room, I don't think the Rams Club, I'm on that executive committee, I know what they think. I don't think Dick Bedore, I don't think any of us want to see that happen. I think we want to stay competitive at the highest level of college athletics. It's just going to take some hard decisions. In terms of the grant of rights, there are, in my estimation, I am an attorney and we've met with, I will tell people that just because you don't hear stuff in the newspaper or just because there is not a report about it does not mean that the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is not preparing and working on avenues to rectify what is a really, really stark financial difference. I mean, I told you what the difference is. Minimum $35 million a year. Those of you, everybody here is in business or has been in business, that's $35 million a year. That's not a one-time gift from Eddie Smith of $25 million, to help build a facility, right? That's not a one-time gift. That's year after year. That's wheelbarrow to the bank money. Okay? I mean, so that is hard to overcome because right now our Rams Club is having to foot the bill for facilities because we don't get money from the state of North Carolina to build athletic facilities. We self-fund those through our booster club, okay? We could also fund those, however, through revenue from TV. So, imagine and those of you in the banking business, PMICU, I mean, how can we multiply that money through bonding and through borrowing? If we got an extra $35 million a year, we can do what we need to get the facilities up to par. I've got real confidence in that. I don't think there's a way to bifurcate the sports. I think it's all or nothing. We got to play in the big leagues or not, and that's basically what I've been informed of. I hope that answers the question. Yes.
Thanks, sir. Is this on? Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, yes. So thank you very much. Can you speak a little bit about innovation and the focus on innovation? I really believe we have a huge opportunity in the state of North Carolina to really tap into the innovation, the creativity, the entrepreneurship when it comes to UNC and NC State. We have some wonderful technologies that are either being worked on that have come out. A lot are on the shelf also. So what is the Board of Governors doing, the Board of Trustees, to say, are we really tapping into the energies, the creativity, the things that can be really making a difference in terms of economic development, employment, our brand as the state of North Carolina? I see so much going on, and yet I don't see Carolina and NC State as, wow, these are hallmarks in this very important state. So if you could share your perspective, that would be great.
Absolutely. That's a good question. So we brought on Dedrick Carter at the end of last year. He is our Chief Innovation Officer. He came from WashU, Washington University in St. Louis. He's got some interesting perspectives on that. I would go back and say that our research dollars and the leadership in the research department at Chapel Hill is second to none. And we continue to build on that library of research at $1.2 billion a year. One of the difficulties at Carolina is we don't have an engineering school. I mean, we got engineering because we've got applied physical science, but we don't have a dedicated engineering school. We are in the top 5 for research dollars in public institutions, and we're the only one even close without an engineering school. So we are working and have been working over the last, I think, probably 7 years, more closely with NC State to leverage, particularly in the bioengineering field, dual degree programs and the ability for our students to take our expertise in the biosciences to engineering and reap some benefits there. I point to the collaboratory led by Dr. Jeff Warren as a place of economic development. The legislature has funded that at very high levels. We have taken an approach. He works with other constituent institutions to develop meaningful research projects, including the elimination of PFAS out of the Cape Fear River. And that has been, to me, the type of game-changing research that you alluded to that Carolina has done and continues to do. Let me tell you, I will tell you, my first day on the board, now 4.5 years ago, I think it's a communication issue. I think there's a lot more going on in Carolina than people know about. I've beat that drum to the point where people are tired of hearing me talking about it, but that's okay, I'll keep talking about it. I think we could do a much better job of communicating the economic benefits the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill brings. I will tell you, Chancellor Guskowitz is bringing back the bus tour. It was very helpful. That's been helpful with legislators and local leaders in communities across the state to actually get a first-hand sort of experience with our faculty members in a relevant setting so that they can talk about, for example, how do you replace a paper mill in Canton, North Carolina that closes unexpectedly? Or what can UNC Chapel Hill do to help that community in terms of economic viability and then cleaning up the space that's left by the old paper mill? Those types of things are things that we ought to really focus on more. You know, we've got the Innovation Center now on Franklin Street. We're going to break ground on the Porthole Alley project, which again goes to my point that the town and the university need to have a better working relationship together. And so I don't think we're there yet with what we need to be doing in terms of pushing the innovation space. I think a little bit of it is communication, though. I think there's a lot more going on than people know about, but to your point, I would agree we're not there yet in terms of what we could be doing as far as being an economic engine. Yes, sir.
You raised an interesting, you gave an interesting number. You said that the basketball revenue for ticket sales was greater than the $13 million for football.
That's right. 15 million for basketball, 13 million for football.
And Keenan Stadium has what, 50,000 seats?
That's correct.
And the Dean Dome has 21.
Yeah. Some of that's due to the fact we play 17 home games versus 6.
So how do we get that revenue up?
We got to play better teams. We've got to play better branded teams. I would just simply say a Saturday afternoon in October, UNC teeing it up against Virginia or UNC teeing it up against Tennessee. What does Chapel Hill look like? I mean, come on, right? I think we tee it up against Tennessee, even if we're a far underdog at the beginning. I think a lot more people come out to that game, and I think a lot more people are willing to pay more. If we were able to play teams that had a more marquee value, now every now, you know, we may play one or two marquee games in Keenan Stadium, but not every single game like the Southeast Conference is playing. They're playing these marquee matchups every single week, and they're charging $100 to $150 more per seat than we are. If we charged $100 more a seat, that's $5.5 million more per game, multiplied over 5 games. Now you're talking about real extra money. You're at $27 million more. That's what I was saying in terms of $35 million more from the average SEC Big Ten team. That's in TV revenue. That didn't include how much more they're getting in ticket sales. I didn't mean to be so blunt, but I hope I answered the question.
No, thank you. It's a concern.
It is a concern. It's a valid concern. I think it's all about marketing. I mean, you know, We teed it up against Wake Forest. Okay, wow. I just don't think people would care as much as even if we teed it up against Mississippi State. I think if Mississippi State came to town, we'd have a full house and we'd have tailgating and we'd have a lot of excitement on Franklin Street. That's my view.
Not the bell. Don't let them bring the bell.
I don't know what it would look like if Rutgers came to town.
Dave, thank you very much for the talk. Dave, it's Chatham House rules. Whatever you say here, obviously it doesn't get repeated.
Well, it's been live streamed, but I don't mind. I've spoken to a lot of groups. I stand by everything I say.
Jeff can edit that. He can take it out there. So, in that the doors are closed, tell us about Kevin Guskowitz. What's the background?
Yeah, great guy. Look, I talked to Kevin yesterday.
But what happened? Why did we lose him?
I was in Charlotte yesterday and had a great time with Kevin because he was there. I'll just tell you what he told me, that he felt like he needed to move on. That was what he told me. And it's as simple as that. Well, I mean, look, Kevin and I had I told Mike and I had a conversation here just a minute ago. Look, I'm a guy that I was born in Lincolnton. I grew up all over North Carolina, lived in Eden from 4 years old to 5th grade. My dad worked for Jim for like a year and a half or 2 years at WCHL, lived in Greensboro, went to high school in Durham, practiced law in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Look, I had every week, I had hour to 2 hour meetings with Chancellor Guskowitz in South Building, with the old well over my left shoulder, man. I mean, I pinched myself every day when I did that, all right? We didn't agree on everything, but we agreed on about 90% of everything that happened at UNC Chapel Hill. I just think it was time. That's what he told me, that he felt like he needed to move on and try something different. That was what he said to me. I can only tell you what he said to me. And we remain good friends. Like I said, I spent time with him yesterday, because Michigan State was actually playing right before we were in Charlotte.
One more quick question.
Yeah.
Just got a real quick one. Assuming that we were to change conferences, would it be possible to do kind of like Notre Dame did and keep our basketball team independent? Is that
possible? I don't know that we would necessarily want to, depending upon what the numbers look like. Look, a conference is supposed to do two things. They're supposed to help you schedule reasonable, exciting games so that you can fill your stadiums and your arenas, and they're supposed to help you make money. I just don't think the ACC is doing either. Again, that's me talking. I'm not speaking for the board. I'm speaking for myself. Yeah, thank you.
Folks, thanks everybody for coming this week. Remember, no meeting next week. It's Easter. We do have a pop-up coming this Wednesday at Brick's Pizza at 5:30. Everybody come on down and have a beverage and a pizza. Brick's, Wednesday, 5:30.
A very tiny one. Yeah. Talk to you later. Say hi to Brenda.
You're right. We got more to do.